action?
Well, Bill 21, now passed as the law of the land here in Quebec, has a track record. Not least, it began in a small town called Hérouville, which passed a charter, certain laws that they would not permit, and it seemed very much aimed at immigrants, at those particularly of the Muslim faith. This raised a hue and a cry throughout Quebec. The media had a heyday with it. It sold a lot of hot copy, so much so that it seemed to really bring to the fore how would Quebec respond to the necessary integration of immigrants from the four corners of the globe, and not least from North Africa, from the Middle East, from the Islamic world, because keep in mind, much of North Africa is Francophone, and Quebec has a policy of favoring immigration from Francophone countries, which explains your well-placed question about Quebec and the ties that it has to la francophonie. Because of those ties, Quebec purposely recruits immigrants from the French-speaking world to come here. When they come, of course, they come with their worldviews, with their cultures, with their religions, and with all that that entails. Quebec also has a policy of encouraging new immigrants to not congregate on the island of Montreal, which is easily the largest city of Quebec, but rather to go to other towns, cities, into the various regions, because Quebec is a huge geographic, just in physical terms. And as a result of this, when people go to the hinterland, if you would, of Quebec, perhaps culture shock or classes of culture can take place. Well, this, because they made it such a hot button issue, eventually the government of Quebec at the time, the Liberal Party of Quebec was in power under Premier Jean Charest, and the leader of the Action Démocratique du Québec, the ADQ, Mario Dumont, publicly said, we must have a commission, we must look into, because the future of Quebec lies in how will we deal with other cultures and other religions as they come here through immigration. And Quebec, like the rest of Canada, depends, its very future relies on immigration, receiving thousands and thousands of immigrants, and they have an impact. How will Quebec society, culture, and citizens deal with the other? In academic terms, we call this alterity. How will they deal with the differentness, the otherness of these immigrants? Well, a commission was set up and appointed two co-presidents of the commission, the philosopher, world-renowned Charles Taylor, who lives here in Montreal, and the other co-president, the sociologist Gérard Bouchard. They went throughout Quebec interviewing people in public forums, and at the end of their research and of their commission, they tabled a report, the Bouchard-Taylor report, and they made recommendations to the Liberal government of Quebec, to Premier Jean Charest. Unfortunately, they never translated the Commission's findings into law, into legislation. This created a vacuum, a power vacuum, and in that vacuum, since they had not acted on the recommendations of, I should say, rather highly regarded Bouchard-Taylor report, this created a space that other political parties could fill the vacuum, since the Liberal government of Quebec had not done so. In fact, this became the workhorse of the Parti Québécois, which decided, they won an election under Pauline Marois, who becomes the first woman premier of Quebec in history, and with her cabinet, they proposed a charter of values. And they said that this charter of values would deal with the issues, the culture clashes, the conflict of cultures in Quebec, and establish a norm through passing as law values that all Quebecers should hold in common. The charters of values proved fatal to her government. They massively lost an election. The Charter of Values alienated so many people, decried as legislating racism, and this ensured the re-election of the Liberal government, this time led by the former neurosurgeon, Philippe Couillard, who became Premier of Quebec. But once again, now that they're back in the saddle, that they have easily re-elected, they do not act on the Bouchard-Taylor report. So in the eyes of the population, for many people, they let the problem fester. They let it persist. They did not bring concrete solutions. They did not act decisively on the Bouchard-Taylor Commission, and because of that, on one hand, and other measures taken by the Liberal government of Quebec under Philippe Couillard, accusations of corruption, the Charbonneau Commission, which indicated that there had been money under the table. All this led to the defeat of the Liberal government of Quebec and the first time ever election of the CAQ, the Coalition Avenir du Québec, with François Legault. And here's the irony of Quebec politics. Believe it or not, François Legault was a minister in the former PQ government. And this is why I maintain that in effect the CAQ pursues or recreates, to all intents and purposes, the Union Nationale. Because Legault, he carries forward the nationalist message, the nationalist vision, the nationalist, at least in appearance, on the political scale, of the Union Nationale, and to show that he means business, that he's going to not just make a promise, but he's going to keep his promise. He said, if we are elected, we will pass a law to settle once and for all the issues around religious symbols, the culture clashes, the cultural conflicts due to immigration and religion, and we're going to do so through legislation that will essentially solve what he perceived as a problem. Now, of course, in doing so, he appealed to his electoral base. And now he tells the world, loud and clear, that he has kept his promise. These were not empty words. He has passed Bill 21 despite all the objections of the visible minorities of Quebec, the religious minorities of Quebec, the ethnic minorities of Quebec, and this has set Quebec on a collision course with the new Quebecers and with its historic minorities, the Anglophone minority or the allophone minority, allophone being all those whose mother tongue, native language, is neither French nor English, and they constitute a very important demographic. In the same breath, I must say that throughout this discourse, to all intents and purposes, no one has spoken of the native peoples of Quebec. And they are numerous. They are important. And unlike the United States of America, they are one of the fastest growing demographics in all of Quebec. I think here, of course, of the Crees of Quebec, who many times have dealt with Hydro-Quebec because their lands, their territory, that's where Hydro-Quebec draws its power and makes its money, to say nothing of the Innu people. And we can go, and the Wendat Hurons, and the Mohawk people. How could it be that the first peoples of Quebec, their voice remains silent in these foremost political discussions of the day?